Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. My name is Randolph Love III, and we are going to be going over the Tax Free Family Bank Workshop. It is the Tax Free Family Bank Workshop, and of course, this is a overview, 30,000 feet over, but I want to go ahead and get going. I believe that all truths are parallel. I think the first person that I heard say that was my mother, or as I call her, my mama, right? And she likes to remind me that I was the first person that she told that to. All truths are parallel was usually be workable and true in one facet of life is workable, true in others. For example, before you consume something with your mouth, you need to know where is the source of this food coming from. I mean, a lot of us, you have no idea. We, myself included, have no idea where some of this food that we eat come from. But that is a truth of life. Before you consume something, you need to know where it's coming from. The same with what you drink. Before you drink something, you need to know where the source of this liquid is coming from. The same goes with knowledge. Before you consume what anybody tells you, you need to know where the source is. Just so you know the source of what I'm about to share with you. My name is Randolph Love III. I'm a chartered financial consultant, chartered life underwriter, chartered property casualty underwriter, and a fellow life management institute. One thing that means is I have more letters after my name than in my name. I heard somebody tell me that before, right? But it also means that I took the time to learn these things and understand these things and get the right education. I am a registered pre-licensing and continuing education provider with the Florida Department of Financial Services. I also provide training and consulting to corporate, federal, state, and local governing agencies. I do assist individuals and business owners with effective tax minimalizing wealth strategies. I have over a decade of experience in the insurance and financial services industries, and I am a partner and franchise consultant with the franchise consultant company. So that is the source of what I'm about to tell you. I join a lot of masterminds and I pay a lot of money to be the dumbest person in the room so that I can soak up everything that I hear and bring it back to you, right? So here's the disclaimer: I am not an attorney. I am not an attorney. And this is information, not advice. I'm just giving you information. I'm not telling you to do anything. This is information, not advice, right? But we want to make sure that you understand the source, and of course, that you are taking this in as information. We can't really know exactly what you should do until we get deep into your situation. So here we go. I want to introduce you to Farmer Jed. Now, Jed has been very successful in his life, right? Jed, he went out, he worked his land, he sold his hay, he sold his goods, and he amassed a huge estate. Jed was so successful and he amassed a huge estate. Do you know what the main indicator that you have been very successful, too successful, in fact, is? The main indicator that you've been too successful is if you start making man-sized mazes out of your bushes, right? If you start making man-sized mazes out of your bushes, maybe you're too successful, right? But I digress. He did well for himself. Manicured lawn, got the pool house for the in-laws whenever they visit, and the only beneficiary that Jed has is his daughter Ellie Mae. Now, Jed raised Ellie Mae well. I mean, she worked the land right along with him. But he doesn't want her to have to manage this large estate all by herself. So what Jed did was he went ahead and he sent out a mailer to all of the eligible bachelors in the small town that they lived in, right? And they all showed up. They drunk his food and they drank his drink. And at the end of the night, Jed took him to the backyard and he said, "Now I'm going to tell you the reason why I brought you all here. I'm on a mission, right? And if you jump in this pool and swim to the other side, I'm going to give you one of three things. One, if you jump into this pool and swim to the other side, I'm going to give you $1 million. Two, or if you jump in this pool and swim to the other side, I'm going to give you my estate, that pool house, that nice house, that manicured lawn, that man-sized maze made from your bushes. Or three, I'm going to give you my daughter's hand in marriage. And keep in mind, if you get my daughter's hand in marriage, you get all of it, the money, the estate, all of it, right? And he said, now, this is no small feat because you have to consider the fact that in this pool, there are crocodile. In this pool, there are snake. In this pool, there are piranha. In this pool, if you swim from one side to the other, I will. And before he could get it out of his mouth again, he heard a splash in the water. And 6.4 seconds later, John emerged from the other side of the pool, and Ned, excited, said, "Good God, son! You did that in a world record. You went in there from 6.4 seconds from one side to the other. You must want $1 million." John said, "No," still out of breath from going from that one side of that pool to the other, avoiding all of those hazards. Still out of breath, John says, "No, I don't. I don't want $1 million." He said, "Well, if you don't want $1 million, then you must want my estate, that the main house, the pool house, the man-sized maze bushes." He said, "No, sir. No, I don't want your estate." He said, "Well, good God, son, welcome to the family. You must want my daughter's hand in marriage. Well, you get all of it." He said, "Sir, no disrespect, but this is a small town. We all Ellie Mae, know Ellie Mae, and nobody here wants to marry Ellie Mae." So Jed says, "Watch your mouth, son. But if you don't want $1 million, if you don't want my estate, if you don't want to marry Ellie Mae, what do you want?" He says, "I want to know the name of the man that pushed me in that pool." Right? And usually when I tell this story, everybody laughs. I usually do it in a group setting. The majority of the room is laughing. But what did I tell you? All truths are parallel. What are you going to do when somebody pushes you in a pool, metaphorically speaking, right? What are you going to do when you get that sudden call that one of those employees that just did something that you told them to never do, now you're liable? Or if you don't own a business, you have a family, what are you going to do? You get that call in the middle of the night that your daughter or your son was just involved in an accident, and now you have to take care of the grandkids. Or what if your spouse was involved in an accident and now they lost capacity or even died, and your whole life has just changed? What are you going to do in those business scenarios and in those real life personal scenarios when the stuff hits the fan? You can't be trying to figure it out on the go like most people. Now, you can do it, right? But why do it? You need to have a plan in place. Now, what we talk about before we start talking about the money, right? What's the use of talking about a chandelier in the foyer if your foundation to the house is all cracked up? When I got my professional designations with the American College of Financial Services, 90% of the time we spent talking about how to save money. And the first person that told me that story about Farmer Jed and Ellie Mae and John, the first person I heard that story from was a very well-known financial advisor, Scott Garcia, out there in the Midwest, right? He encountered so many people that had these issues, and I encounter as well. So the way somebody can protect them from this is to set the foundation to where if something happens in their business and in their personal, they're all situated. So if you look at this chart right here, you will see an LLC on this right side of the chart, right? That's the active income producing side of your estate, right? This is the side of your estate where you actually go out and you earn active income. Now, your LLC, a lot of people have a LLC treated as LLC, single member LLC, not realizing that if challenged, uh, more than likely they're going to be treated as if they were a sole proprietor. Because how easy is it going to be for someone to prove that you've been utilizing business money for personal for business, right? You created an LLC to limit your liability. It's a limited liability company, but the way you have it set up, not only is it probably not protecting you the way it should, but it's definitely not advantage. All truths are parallel. Has anybody ever heard of a company called Click Funnels? Well, ClickFunnels is a company that's worth over $500 million. The owner, Russell Brunson, my business partner, is his father, Ross Brunson. As the twig bends, so grows the tree. Uh, what one a lot of the principles that I'm sure taught Russell growing up, he taught me. And one of these principles that he told me is that humans hate to be inconvenienced. They hate the rain, they hate the snow, they hate the hail, they hate the sleet. So what they did was they built the structure around them. But when they built this structure, they didn't just build an one big room. They separated the rooms into different spaces for different things. You have the kitchen to cook in, you have the bathroom to clean yourself in, you have your bedroom to sleep in, you have your entertainment room to entertain guests in. You're not going to use the restroom and relieve yourself in the kitchen. You're not going to go cooking in the bathroom sink. You're not going to entertain someone in your bedroom. Well, I guess it depends on who you're entertaining, right? But you get what I'm saying. Every room has its function. All truths are parallel. Every entity has its function. Yes, an LLC is, if it's set up correctly, is going to limit your liability, right? But it's not the best in taxes. It's being treated as a pass-through entity. So even though it limits your liability, you need something to help you out with taxes. So what people do, instead of it being a single member LLC with your personal name on it, what we do is we make it a single member LLC with the LLC treated as S Corp, listed as the manager and operator of your LLCs that do business with the public. These LLCs do business with the public, but your holding company, your LLC treated as S Corp, does no direct business with the public. It just manages your companies. Now, what's the benefit of an LLC treated as S Corp? So it allows the simplicity of what it takes to set up an LLC, but it gives you the tax treatment of an S Corp. What's the beneficial tax treatment of an S Corp? It lets you separate your active income from your passive income, your W 2 income from your K1 income. So, because let me tell you this, all of you use your personal money to start your business. That makes you an investor in your company. So you are eligible to get the treatment of being an employee versus being an investor. Why is that important? So when you look at the way your money is set up when it comes to the way it's taxed, if you are a business owner, you're getting taxed twice. You're getting taxed income tax and you're getting taxed self-employment tax. Now, self-employment tax is 15.3%. 12.4% is that of that is for your Social Security, and 2.9% of that is for your Medicare. 15.3%, 12.4% is for Social Security. 2.9% is for Medicare. The first $168,600, you're going to get taxed at full 15.3%, right? And then after that $168,600, you're still going to get taxed to 2.9% for Medicare on up until how much income that it shows that you earn as a worker, right? So why do you want to pay all of that when what you can do if you're an LLC treated as S corp and say, hey, yes, my company, let's say your company earned $500,000, right? Let's say your company earned $500,000. So you say, yes, my company earned $500,000, but 60,000 of that was my income. So that's the only part of my income that you're going to tax twice with this income tax and self-employment tax. That's the only part. But the rest of it, you're going to tax me at a lower rate as if I'm an investor in my company, right? Because what the government has determined is money earning money doesn't need Social Security. Money earning money doesn't need Medicare. Now, a human earning money needs Social Security. A human earning money typically needs Medicare, but not money earning money. So, as long as you can separate the human yourself, your W 2 income from the money uh, that's earning interest and that you're earning, that's the best way for you to be set up the right way. Now, what happens if you are single? If you are single, remember I said that 2.9% goes after that $168,600. If you are single, they're going to add an extra 0.9%. That's going to come to a total of 3.8%. They're going to add another 0.9% after you hit $200,000 in income. So now a 3.8% is going to be coming off for Medicare. And I know that might not seem like a lot, but it adds up. What if you're married filing jointly? If you're married filing jointly, after your household earns $250,000, they're going to tack on that extra 0.9% to total 3.8% for Medicare. What if you're married filing separately? I know a lot of you do married filing separately. You don't know that typically IRS treatment for people who do married filing separately, they treat you as if you are a leper. Reason being, remember I said that the single person didn't have to pay an extra 0.9% until they exceeded 200,000. If you're doing married filing separately, after you exceed 125,000, so even before you reach that $168,600 I was talking about, after you exceed that amount, 125,000, they're going to tack on that extra 0.9%. And then once again, I know 3.8% doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up. You want to find a way to legally avoid taxes. Tax avoidance is illegal. Legal tax avoidance is legal. All right. So after you've utilized the LLC to protect you against liability for doing direct business with the public. And then you name your single member LLC. The member that's the single member is your holding company. Your LLC treated as S corp. And the reason why you set up the LLC treated as S corp, so you can have the simple setup, but also the tax treatment to where you can separate your active income from your passive income, because you don't want all your income to get taxed twice. After you've satisfied whatever the nominal tax requirement that you had to do on this side, with the money after taxes, you're going to make a capital contribution to your family bank. Now, your family bank is a an entity that holds your assets. Now, a lot of people are not aware of this entity. It's called an LLLP, a limited liability limited partnership. An LLLP, a limited liability limited partnership. So you want to have your LLLP, limited liability, limited partnership, domiciled in a state that's private, a state that doesn't have your name anywhere publicly on it, a state that doesn't have your address anywhere publicly on it. And one of those states is a state by the name of Wyoming. It's said that Wyoming has more entities, paper entities, than physical entities. Because think about it, you are a entity, you are a living entity. A business is an entity on paper, and it's said that Wyoming has more paper entities than actual physical entities. And one of those reasons might be is because they let somebody have a business to where everything is considered private. Now, why do people set up LLLPs? What's the benefit of setting up an LLLP? It allows you to separate your general partners from your limited partners. All right. So the reason when your LLC treated as S corp made a capital contribution to this bank, it did it for 99% limited partnership ownership of the family bank. Now, here's the benefit of being a limited partner. A benefit of being a limited partner is you you get to collect all of the profits. The disadvantage is you're not able to share in any of the expenses. And what I mean by that is you can't write off things that business is doing because you're not actively working in the business. Now, the general partner can write off certain expenses because they are actively working in the business on a regular basis. But the limited partners, even though you can't write off those expenses, the benefit is you're able to collect profits without being liable. It also means you can't make decisions for this company. Now, what the person does is on the active income side, to where the person has it to where their holding company, their LLC, treated as S corp, is the single member manager of all of their active income public facing companies. What you do on this side, which is your passive income side of your money, you have it set up to where this is the single member owner of your passive income producing entities. Because here's the thing, there are a lot of things that you're going to own that have no inherent liability. Like your savings account isn't going to hit somebody with their car. Your Bitcoin account, your money market account, your bank CDs, your cash value life insurance. You don't have to worry about somebody suing you because that account caused somebody harm. However, if you had a passive a rental property, that's considered passive income that has some inherent liability. So you might want to silo that off from your other things that you have. So on this side, your passive income, you are making sure that all of your personal assets are taken care of. Now, one of the things that a lot of people make, the mistakes that a lot of people make when they set up these things, is they create this whole company and they put all of their personal assets in it, and they think they're just protected if they were to get sued. But if you were to do some research, what you might discover is if they can prove that you set up an entity solely for the purposes of protecting your personal assets, they can strike that down. They can act as if you did not cut the strings and put your assets over somewhere protected. You want to be able to show that, yeah, hey, yes, I have an entity that owns a lot of what were in my personal assets. Absolutely. However, my personal assets are just coming along for the ride. This is a real business. And there are ways for you to have it set up to where, because I understand you're over here on the right side. You're actively working in your companies. You don't need to be over here trying to figure out how to make money. There's a way that you can have your entity set up to where it's protecting your personal assets, and if challenged, you can show that this entity owns assets that make money. And we're going to talk about that a little later on in this workshop. We're also going to be talking about the benefits of the living trust, because here's what's going to be happening. Your living trust, via your private operating agreements, You're going to convey ownership from your limited liability limited partnership and your LLC treated as S corp. You're going to convey ownership privately to your trust. But guess what controls your trust? Your private family trust company. So look, you don't actually control any, you could essentially control everything but own nothing. If you have it to where you have an LLC treated as S corp that's owned and managed by an LLC, an LLC that's owned and managed by a holding company that's an LLC treated as S corp, and then that ownership is conveyed privately to your trust, and then that LLC treated as S corp also as the 99% limited partner and owner of your family bank that holds all of your personal assets, including your investments and your cash value life insurance policy. Guess who the 1% general owner of your family bank is going to be? Your trust. So now your trust has owns 100% stock in your LLC treated as S corp, and it's the 1% general owner. However, the trust doesn't control what happens with all of this. It's the family trust company that controls it. My grandfather owned motels, and now he still owns a room at home to this day. And one of the things that he told me was, if you have just two people living in a house, you always know who did it, right? If you go to a refrigerator and you look in it and you had a sandwich in there, and now that sandwich is gone, and it's only one other person in that house, who did it? You know it wasn't you, so you know for a fact that it was this other person. But all you have to do is introduce one more person for that reasonable doubt to come in. Because if you go to open that refrigerator and your sandwich is gone, and you go to one of those people and say, "Hey, did you eat my sandwich?" What they're gonna say? "No, I didn't eat it. Must have been other person." And then you're gonna go to that other person. They're gonna say, "No, I didn't eat it. Must have been that other person." And it's a back and forth rigmarole that you won't be able to stop. The same could be said if you have an LLC treated as LLC that does business with the public, that's owned by an LLC treated as S corp, and that LLC is treated as S corp also is the 99% owner of your family bank, and your family bank owns all of your personal assets, the inherent liability and non-inherent liability. And then privately, ownership for both sides is conveyed to your trust, and your trust is owned by your family. If something were to happen, who's liable? Because here's the thing, a lot of you have it set up to where if your business does harm to somebody, that damage won't come back to you personally. And what's to say if you are personally driving your personal car and you get into an accident and a baby dies in the other car? That happens, folks. That's not just something that I'm just saying. What happens if you are driving personally, you get into an accident and then a baby dies? That's easily $1 million judgment. And now your name personally owns all of your LLCs. Your name personally owns all of your everything, all of your personal assets. That's when they're able to come in through the back door and you to have to liquidate your business. Because here's the thing, we're not setting up a business to get over on people. Now, I don't, I want to make sure that we're not setting this up so we can take advantage of people because we know that they can't, sue us. No, we're setting this up to protect ourselves against the frivolous lawsuit people. Because one of the benefits of domiciling your family bank in Wyoming is they have what's called charging orders. So let's say you were to get sued, or let's say that somebody wants to sue you frivolously. Like they want to sue your company for no good reason. This is a frivolous lawsuit, and they want to say, all right, this is going to be a quick, easy check. And usually it's considered a quick, easy check for them because they know that they can go to an attorney, and most attorneys are willing to take their case on contingency, which means that, hey, uh, I know you can't pay me up front for my services. So what I'll do is I'll work this lawsuit for you. And when the lawsuit is done, whatever you win, you give me 33%. You giving me money is contingent upon me winning this case for you. And if I don't win this case, then you owe me nothing, right? So a lot of frivolous lawsuit people are willing to do that because they don't have to come out of pocket. What might happen if somebody wants to get a lawsuit, they're going to look, and let's say that they're able to find this company, because remember, this company is nowhere listed publicly with your name publicly on it. But let's say they are able to find this company. Soon as the attorney sees that you have this LLLP domiciled in Wyoming, one of the first things they're going to do is let that person that's trying to sue you know, say, hey, we can still go through with the lawsuit, but I have to charge a retainer. I can't work this on contingency. What do y'all think is the reason that this attorney went from being willing to take any case on contingency to now they need a retainer? It's because they understand the domicile state that they're dealing with. They understand that there's a chance that even if they win a judgment against you, because there's only charging orders, you could not get paid out, right? So, and I'm going to go through in more detail what it means, the charging orders versus foreclosure. If somebody were to file a lawsuit to you, there are typically two legal remedies if you are found liable. They do charging orders saying how much you owe, and then they do foreclosure where they have to liquidate your assets in order to pay how much you owe. A lot of states have both charging orders and foreclosure, to where first is charging, and if you don't satisfy that, then they go to foreclosure to liquidate things. Wyoming doesn't do that. All right, so that's the difference between a charging order state versus a charging order and foreclosure state. So now just imagine this person, now they have to come out of pocket. So for most people, if they have to come out of pocket to pay for an attorney, the lawsuit is dead in the water, right? But let's say that they do have the money and they want to go ahead and pay this retainer for this attorney. What's going to happen is, when the attorney, let's say they file the lawsuit, and let's say for whatever reason they win the lawsuit, and let's say it's $1 million judgment against your company. Because it's a charging order state, you don't have to, and they are only allowed to take money from distributions that your company makes. You don't have to make a distribution from your company ever again if you don't want to. You can just borrow from your company for the remainder of your life, right? So with that being the case, so let's say once again a lawsuit was filed against you, the person paid the retainer, they won the lawsuit, and then they got the charging order for $1 million. You really don't have to pay in a lot of instances, right? But so what you might do is then you get what they call a second bite at the apple, to where you can go back and say, hey, I know you won this judgment against me. It's $1 million judgment, but as you know, my company is domiciled in Wyoming. It's an LLP, so you really can't, I really don't have to make any distributions. However, if you sign this release for, let's say, 100,000, I know the lawsuit you won was $1 million, but let's say 100,000, you sign this release, let's just call it even. A lot of times they're going to take that deal because a percentage of something is better than 100% of nothing. All right. So when you look at all of these entities, you're like, man, how many tax returns I'm going to have to file? How many tax returns am I going to have to file? Actually, it's only about 3 tax returns. Now, you are going to have to file a document for the partnership, basically saying how much money that each partner is getting. And then you're going to file a tax return for your LLC treated as S Corp, because that's going to, so this right here is going to cover all of the taxes over here, right? Everything that is being earned by your family bank, your inherent and non-inherent liability passive assets is going to be calculated here. And whatever the tax obligations are going to be taken care of by your LLC treated as S Corp. Because if you actually look at when you file taxes, it doesn't say which business earned the money. It says which business is responsible for paying the taxes on the money that was earned. So all you would do is say, all right, you'll file your partnership paperwork, and then you'll file your taxes for your LLC treated as S corp and your personal 1040 taxes. So really only three tax returns: the partnership filing, which I call it a return because you do have to file it. And then you have to do your LLC treated as S corp, which is the 1120S, and then also your 1040 tax return. So that's an overview of how it works as far as the LLC treated as S corp, the LLP, and the trust. Now, like I told you, in order for you to protect your personal assets, your family bank has to be a legitimate business. So we're going to actually go into how to make your family bank a legitimate business. But hey, if you want a copy of this chart right here, as well as some another additional free documents I'm gonna give you, just text Legacy 24 to 904-822-4262. Legacy 24 to 904-822-4262, and that's LEGACY 24, no spaces, no dashes, to 904-822-4262. If you outside of the country, it's +1 country code. All right, so I'm going to ask y'all, what's better, a will or a trust? What's better, a will or a trust? Well, really and truly, it depends. If you're an attorney, you would say it depends. All right, if you have a will or a trust and your main goal is to avoid probate and to reduce fees, time, and expenses for your family, your beneficiaries, if that's the main purpose, then a trust is probably better, because all a will does is guarantee probate. Yes, it's better than nothing. Dying with a will is better than dying without a will, also known as dying intestate, right? But if your main goal was to accomplish those things that I mentioned, save time, save money for your family, for your beneficiaries, for your friends, then a trust is the way to go. So since a trust is the way to go for most people, where should you get your trust from? Are you only able to get your trust from the situs in the state that you reside in, or are you able to shop around? Well, you can definitely shop around. Has anybody ever heard of the term jurisdiction shopping? Jurisdiction shopping. Well, if you never heard of the term jurisdiction shopping, let me give you an insight on how it would work. Remember, I told you that those businesses on paper are a paper entity and you are a physical, in the flesh entity. Well, let me show you what these paper entities are doing. These paper entities, 64% of the Fortune 500 companies are domiciled in Delaware, right? Remember, I was telling you about how the LLPs, a lot of people are domiciling those in Wyoming. Well, a lot of people are domiciling corporations, because an LLP is not a corporation. Apparently, a lot of these Fortune 500 companies, they see benefit in domiciling their companies in Delaware. For example, where's the home office for Boeing? Seattle. But where is their business domiciled? Delaware. Where's the home office for Coca-Cola? Atlanta. But where's their business domiciled? Delaware. What do you think is the reason that they are domiciling their businesses in these states that are other than where they are actually laying their heads, their home office? They're doing it because they're trying to save money on taxes. They're trying to mitigate their liability, right? So guess what? If a paper entity can do it, you can do it too. So yes, we're not talking about businesses, we're talking about trust. But if they can domicile a business, you can cite us a trust. Guess what state has been named the best state to cite us your trust by the annual Domestic Asset Protection Trust State Rankings? Nevada. Nevada. What are some of the reasons people are doing this in Nevada? It's complete asset protection. Nevada affords the most protection of any state in the United States. There are no exception creditors, not even in the case of claims of spousal or child support. Under the law, forced airship claims pursuant to the civil law would be rejected as well. Look at that. Forced airship claims would be rejected. Listen, how many CDL drivers we have in the building? Listen, I know y'all CDL drivers got a family on the other side of the country, right? You don't want you don't want none of those kids showing up to your real family, right? I'm just joking, right? But definitely what you want to make sure what you want to happen happens. And what if you never had the opportunity to meet this child, and a child comes out of nowhere, a child that you never even known, but now all of a sudden, because they can prove that they are your offspring, is causing turmoil in what you have going on. This is saying right here, there's no forced airship claims. The commitment of the state to a strict reading of the statute has been upheld by a decision of the Nevada Supreme Court. Nevada also has an abbreviated statute of limitations of only 2 years from the transfer into a trust before the transfer assets are protected. In addition to top of the line spendthrift trust asset protection, beneficiaries of Nevada administered discretionary trusts are accorded significant protections. What is this saying? Now, what some people do is, if they want to make sure that the estate is completely sealed, even if they have a trust, what they might do is take one of those cars that's in the estate and still run it through probate, and and they go through all that stuff, the curing probate, putting the estate in the newspaper for the next 3 weeks and things of that nature, right? Some people, they do that just so they can get rid of, with a low value asset, just to go ahead and seal out all people trying to put claims against the estate. What this is saying is, if you don't go through that process, still after 2 years, you can make sure that that's never a possibility, that somebody can come in and take over the trust. Also, it's saying that a spendthrift trust. So basically, what they're saying is, let's say your beneficiary is somebody that's terrible with money. You just, as soon as they get money, it's like it leaks through their fingertips, and they got people that they owe money, they got creditors, and you feel like if you leave them money, the creditors are going to take everything. No, actually, if you have a spendthrift trust, like Nevada type trust, then even if your beneficiary owes money to people, they can't come into the trust and take the money to pay his bills, but he can still have access to the money, him or her, to do what they need. All right. No taxes. Nevada imposes no income taxes on or transfer taxes with respect to trusts administered in the state. This isn't just a statutory requirement, it's embedded in the Nevada Constitution. This allows the legal avoidance of state income taxes by use of a trust with its situs of administration in Nevada. What they're saying is, say, hey, you can live anywhere in the United States and have a trust that's situs in Nevada. However, when you pass away and this revocable trust becomes an irrevocable trust, it must be administered by a corporate trustee or a trustee. It can be a company or a person that is living in Nevada or domiciled in Nevada. All right. That's very important. So what they're saying is, all right, yeah, we can utilize these benefits, and I'm going to go over some other benefits that the Nevada Situs Trust get, but you have to make sure you follow the rules. And one of those rules is, whoever this person or entity that's administering your trust, you have to put that name of that company or that person in your documents for when it seals. Also, did you know that Nevada is one of the only a handful of states in the entire nation to offer a valid and validate electronically created and electronically signed trusts, and electronically created and electronically signed wills and testaments? Listen, this is very important because, hey, who doesn't want copies their copies of their trust documents in paper. But what happens when you are forced to do everything via paper? And we're living in a day and age where we have all of these modern conveniences. What happens is, because it takes you more time than you want it to take, you might never do it at all. So you want to have it set up to where you have an option to do ease of use. Listen, we may still get all of the documents signed traditionally, but if you have something come up where you need to get it taken care of yourself, you don't want to have to wait on the attorney, or it's something very simple, very easy, you can just go ahead and get it electronically signed without having to deal with paper, without having to deal with additional things. Also, typically, a valid last will and testament must be dated and signed by the testator, the person whose estate is being distributed through the will, in the presence of two witnesses who are not related to the testator and who do not stand to inherit from the will, sometimes referred to as a disinterested witness. To create a valid trust, the grantor, also sometimes referred to as the settlor or trustor, should appear personally before a notary public to acknowledge he or she was the signer of the trust document. However, this is Nevada statute 133.085 and 163.0095. Now provide that in Nevada, a will and trust may be drafted, signed, and even witnessed and notarized electronically or virtually and still be valid. Once again, I'm not telling you that you have to situs your trust in Nevada. My main purpose for letting you know about this is to teach you about the term jurisdictional shop and to let you know that you are not limited to situsing your trust in the state that you live in, and you do have options, right? But let's just go a little deeper, right? This is another Nevada statute, 163.0095, and this goes into detail about it. Electronic trust requirements, conversion into a certified paper original, and destruction of electronic record. Regardless of the physical location of the settler, an electronic trust must be deemed to be executed in the state and will be governed by the laws of this state and subject to the jurisdiction of the courts of this state if the electronic trust is A, transmitted to and maintained by a custodian designated in the trust instrument at the custodian's place of business in this state or at the custodian's residence in this state, are maintained by the settler at the settler's place of business in this state, or at the settler's residence in this state, or by the trustee at the trustee's place of business in this state, or at the trustee's residence in this state. Apparently, it has to be in this state. And this state that they're referring to is Nevada. And if you want, you can, check out the Nevada statutes in order to pull this stuff up, right? So basically, once again, I'm just letting you know that you have options. If you like, just Google what are the benefits to situsing my trust in Nevada, and that can help you out. Now, I want to make sure that y'all understand this. There are no trust police. And what do I mean by that? Now, we can build the most beautiful, complex trust rules that we can dream of. It's only as good as the successor trustee is able to understand and implement it. Some of these trustees that you choose are people that you know, like, and trust, but maybe they might not have the capacity to do what you expect them to do. And even if they do have the capacity to do what you expect them to do, sometimes taking on that responsibility ostracizes them and alienates them from the rest of the family and the friends, because all they're trying to do is follow your wishes. But these people, they don't understand that. And now Nobody doesn't talk to anybody, and they haven't talked for the past 5 Christmases, right? Sometimes, depending on how complex it is, or if you're somebody who understands when you first bestow this honor, because it is an honor. When you name somebody as a trustee or successor trustee of your estate, they should take it as an honor because you are the person that they are the person that you trusted the most, that you thought was the most responsible. But after about the first year, it's an honor, and they're excited, they're proud. This they really respected me, and they really thought a lot of the way I handle myself and do business. At first, you're proud, but after year 2, 3, it starts to become too much. And because there's no trust police, either this person is not going to do what you're saying that they're supposed to be doing as your trustee, or they're going to just completely dissolve it altogether. So a lot of people might decide to utilize a corporate trustee, and especially if you're somebody that lives in another state and you are looking to silence your trust in Nevada. Remember, you have to have your successor trust actually administered by somebody who is living in the state. So a corporate trustee would be your option. Usually corporate trustees, they charge an average of 1 to 3% of whatever the estate is. Now it could be more, it could be less, right? Depending on who you work with. But just know the main thing is you're more than welcome to name a, a person as your trustee, but you definitely need to understand that you have the option of utilizing a corporate trustee if you want it, which is like a business that does this. This is all they do. And also, you have the option of having them listed as a contingent. Let's say that your primary trustee is a flesh and blood entity, but you want to list your corporate trustee. If that person is unwilling or unable to do their duties as this trustee, then that corporate trustee can come into play. Now, here's what I see a lot of people do that you probably shouldn't do. If you're going to name a person, name one person. Don't get in here because you got 2 kids. You make one the 50% primary trustee and the other the 50%. What happens when you have 2 people that are in charge of making the decision? A lot of times nothing gets done. One person has to be in charge, and it can cause a lot of fights with them trying to figure out what's supposed to be done next. So like I was telling y'all, I'm going to show you how you're able to make your family bank a legitimate business. And one of the ways that you can make your family bank a legitimate business is you need to have it own some assets. So I'm going to tell you about the assets because listen, even though you need this family bank to be earning assets, you don't want these assets that is earning to be considered income. You don't want these assets that is earning to be something that can potentially knock you out when it comes to your other strategies. So I'm gonna show this to y'all. This is a trivia question and see if you can determine why this is true. You have 2 married couples. One married couple name is John and Mary. The other married couple is Joe and Donna. They both have investments of 500,000 each. They both withdraw 5% of that amount, which is 25,000 each. They both have an average return of 6%, which is $30,000 each. They both have an inflation adjustment that of 3% every year. However, at age 78, John and Mary have a negative $12,143, but Joe and Donna have a positive $1,132,964. How is that even possible? Right? Why is one couple broke? And why does one couple have over double their investment? Well, I can tell you part of the reason is who is the worst business partner? Who would you say is the worst business partner? What if I told you that I wanted us to go into business together? I want me and you and me, to go into business together. However, I don't want to have to go to any of these conferences. You go to all the conferences. You sign all of the leases. You pay all of the bills. You build all of the relationships. You work in the business day in, day out, Monday through Sunday. And when it's all said and done, I won't have. As a matter of fact, not only do I want half, I want to have the option of changing my mind how much my half is at any point in the future. What if I told you I wanted to be your business partner? Would you, and those were the terms, would you take me on as a business partner? Well, what's different between that proposition, that business proposition, than what's happening with the IRS? Because here's the thing, an IRA is just an IOU. And, of course, is a IRA is an individual retirement account. But I'm not just talking about the individual retirement accounts. I'm talking about all of the qualified retirement plans, the 401ks, the 403bs, the 457s, the thrift plans. I'm talking about all of those qualified retirement accounts, right? Now, we're going to talk about Roth. One of the benefits of Roth is you're paying with after tax dollars. We're going to talk about that, but right now we're talking about the qualified retirement accounts that you're paying with before tax dollars. And what's the reason that you're paying with these with before tax dollars? What did your financial advisor tell you? Your financial advisor told you that, hey, the reason that we're paying this with before tax dollars is because your tax rate is obviously going to be lower in retirement than it is now that you're working. I mean, obviously, right? Well, not so much. What ends up happening is when you retire, typically when you retire, you're no longer contributing to a qualified retirement account. There goes that credit. Typically, when you retire, you're no longer paying a mortgage. There goes that credit. Now, in retirement, yes, you're making less money, right? But your tax rate is the same. You're making less money, so it's a lower amount but the same tax rate. So if all things are even, you need the smaller amount money more than you needed the slightly potential bigger amount back in the past, right? You don't have to take my word for it. If you have anyone in your family that's 65 years or older, 65, 67, 70 years old, 72, 75, ask them how their qualified retirement accounts treated them. And if they say, ah, man, it did perfect, say, oh, that's great. I mean, well, everybody else I've been asking is saying that it didn't quite work out. Is it not okay for me to look at yours to see how good it did? Oh, I don't know about that, young blood, right? Ask, right? And then you will see, right? So let me tell you, I'm going to have a simple illustration to show you how unnecessary taxes can adversely affect what you're trying to do. Very simple, right? Now, before I get into it, you have to understand how compounding interest works. Let's say there was a pond, right? And in this pond, in the middle of this pond, there was one lily pad. And every day the lily pads doubled. One day it was one lily pad. The next day it was two lily pads. The next day it was four lily pads. And the next day it was eight lily pads, so on and so forth. Every day it doubled. If it takes this pond 49 days for it to be covered in lily pads, how many days did it take for it to be halfway covered in lily pads? And usually what a lot of people do is they say, well, if it took 49 days, then half of 49 is so approximately what? Maybe 25, 26 days, 24, 25, 26 days that it took. Actually, no. If it's doubling every day, 1, 2, 4, 816, and it took 49 days for the pond to be completely covered. Then it would have only taken 48 days for it to be halfway covered. That's how compound interest works. It starts small in the beginning, but then as it goes, it just keeps getting bigger. The same thing applies to this. If you double $1 20 times, that $1 from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32, that $1 after 20 days will be $1,048,576, right? That's a lot of money. But what happens when you just apply just the 25% tax rate to that dollar, right? That $1,000,000 just dropped dramatically to $72,570.64. Now, here's the thing. I know I got a lot of money making people in this workshop on this stream. So I wouldn't be surprised if y'all are not looking at uh, already in or headed toward the 33% tax bracket. What happens when you apply a 33% tax bracket to that doubling dollar? It drops down even further to $27,362.05. Here's the thing, y'all. Don't be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't accept something better. Because what do y'all think the future of tax is going to be? Is it going to be lower, the same, or higher? I think it's a safe bet that the future of taxes are going to be higher. And all I got to do is ask you, do you want to pay the most possible taxes or the least possible taxes, right? All truths are parallel. If you were a farmer, would you rather pay the taxes on what it costs you to buy a handful of seeds? Or do you rather pay the taxes of the value on the value of a field full of crops? Handful of seeds, field full of crops. All truths are parallel. When you are deferring taxes to the unknown future, that's the equivalent of you of saying, I don't want to pay taxes on the seed, but I want to pay an unknown, unforeseen, unquantifiable taxes on my future crops and harvest, right? And all I got to do is break it down, right? Because that same couple, this is what happened to that couple. You know how one couple was in the negative 12,000 and the other couple more than doubled their money? That first couple, they didn't realize that they had to do what's called required minimum distribution, RMDs, on their qualified retirement accounts. Because, they realized that, hold up, I paid all this money into this and now they're counting it as income and now it's keeping me from getting my benefits. And now I have to appear indigent in order to get any additional help. You want to find a way to have access to the money you need, but without it being considered income. Because guess what? That first couple, they had to pay $164,337 on total taxes paid on their required minimum distributions, and they were forced to start that at age 72. They didn't want to take it out because they saw how it was adversely affecting their other benefits, but they were forced to take it out, right? Taxes paid on the growth from the rollover of the required minimum distribution. Because once you take that money out, you got to put it somewhere. And when you put it somewhere else, chances are, if you follow these same habits, that the money that's being earned on that is going to be taxable as well. So you're going to end up paying $67,338 in taxes on where you relocate those required minimum distributions. And then taxes paid on the remaining after death. Because what happens is when you pass away, whoever your beneficiaries are going to have to pay taxes again. That comes to a total of $106,665. And all of that combined comes to a total of $338,339. Whereas the other couple, if they went ahead and ripped the Band-Aid off, instead of paying a lot of taxes over a long period of time, what they do is they take not very valuable information and they don't just listen and not do anything. Because here's the thing. A lot of people say that knowledge is power. That's not true. Knowledge is only potential power. Applied knowledge is power. And when you learn something like what I'm about to teach you, you have to apply it. And what happens is if you rip the band-aid off, listen, I'm not one of those people that's going to tell you I'm going to keep you from paying 100% of all taxes. But we're going to make it to where it's as minimal as possible. And looking at this scenario, if they did rip the band-aid out and they got out of a taxable environment and then they moved into a non-taxable environment, yeah, they'll end up paying $125,000 in taxes. But now they're not paying no taxes on the future growth, and they're not paying any taxes on the money being passed at their death, right? And all you can do is extrapolate. Some of y'all might be like 500,000. I don't got 500,000, and some of y'all might be like 500,000 is a little bit of money. Just extrapolate. If you don't have 500,000, just act as if this was your 50,000. How and do the math. Divide each of these numbers by 10. Or let's say if you got $5 million, do the math and multiply this by 10 to where you can see per your situation what it would look like. We need to avoid paying unnecessary taxes as much as possible. And this is how you do it. So before I get into this side of the presentation, I like to ask people, is there anyone who doesn't like when others find loopholes to legally avoid taxes? Now, here's one of those things to where, like the author of uh, Never Split the Different, Chris Voss says, don't be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't accept something better. Now, I know how it feels, y'all, being the ones paying all the taxes. Then you looking at all these 100 millionaires, billionaires not paying any taxes. Listen, do you really want them to pay as much taxes as possible, or do you want to learn how they do what they do, right? So that's one side of the coin. Let's say you're somebody who you don't like that they're avoiding taxes. However, you wouldn't be against learning how you might be able to do some of the same stuff, right? Now, let's also talk about the person who says, hey, listen, I'm a red blooded American, and a part of being an American is paying taxes. And here, listen, once again, I believe pay whatever taxes that you are supposed to pay. I'm just against paying unnecessary, voluntary, additional taxes if you don't have to pay it. But even if you're somebody that believes that we should give all our money in taxes, my next question to you is, do you believe the government is handling your tax dollars correctly and appropriately and responsibly? If you don't believe that they're doing the responsible thing and they're handling everything correctly and appropriately, maybe, just maybe, you need to put some strategies in place to where if you made 100,000, instead of just giving them 30,000, you're able to hold on to that 30,000, and you're able to not just keep it for yourself as a greedy person, but you're able to donate to the charities that you know, like, trust. You're able to give to the friends and family members. Instead of telling friends or family members that you don't have nothing to give them, you're able to say, hey, here's the gift. You can have this, you can have that. You're able to see what your money is doing and handle it responsibly, like a good steward. If you had that choice, would you not take that choice? And I think most people, regardless of where they stand on this, would not be upset if they were able to give away more money or help more people that they know, right? So all truths are parallel. What creative things can you do with baking soda? And listen, I grew up in a in a neighborhood to where they did some creative things with baking soda. I'll tell you that much. I say they did some creative things with it, but I'm not talking about that, right? You can have a mouthwash with baking soda, teeth whitener, deodorant, fridge odor neutralizer, and air freshener, a whitening agent for laundry, a kitchen cleaner, a garbage odor eliminator. One of my mentors, Doug Andrew, the godfather of IUL, he was the first person that showed me this. And when he asked me, and I said all of these things, and he said, Randolph, he said, every time I ask people this, they never say what it was actually made for. Cooking. Baking soda was made to do creative things with cooking, right? So all I gotta say is don't think about what it is, think about what it does. If I told you that there was something that was liquid, meaning that you can get to your money within 1 to 3 days without penalty. If I told you it was safe, meaning that you saw your money, you go to sleep, and you're not scared that you're gonna wake up like a lot of people have woke up in the past to where you've lost 20 to 40% of your principal overnight. What if I told you there was a place to where you can put your money to where you're getting good, consistent, tax-free rate of returns? And that last is tax-free, because here's the thing. Usually when people go looking at places to put their money vehicles, the first thing that they pay attention to is the rate of return. That's actually the third thing on the list. Because guess what? If I gave you an investment and that investment was earning 100% per day, meaning you put $100 in there, next day is $200, next day is $400, next day is 100% per day. Does it matter how much money is earning if you can't access it? If I say, hey, guess what? Hey, this money, hey, you got $3 trillion in here, but you can't get to it. It's not liquid. It's not, you can't get to it when you need it. Or what if I said, yeah, it's earning 100% per day. However, there is a chance, a very strong chance, that when you go to sleep and wake up, all the money that you earned is going to be completely wiped away. So return doesn't beat liquidity and doesn't beat safety. But what's the point of the rate of return if the money is completely taxed when you go to get to it? So this is where you want your money to be. And I'll tell you, the best way in order for you to get something like that is a properly structured index universal life policy. Remember that I said that I was going to show you how you're going to have a family bank that's considered a legitimate business, and your personal assets are able to come along for the ride, but it's not going to keep you from working actively in your companies that you do business with the public. You have to buy assets like properly structured index universal life policy. Now, keep in mind, I said index universal life. I didn't say VUL. I said IUL. Uh, Variable universal lives are policies that are invested directly into the stock market, and the only thing that's guaranteed on it is your death benefit. Now, if that's what you want, so be it. I prefer to have my properly structured index universal life policy not invested directly in the stock market. I prefer it use the indexes as a measuring stick. So because it's not invested directly into the indexes, it's only using the indexes as a measuring stick. Whenever the market does good, you win. Whenever the market does bad, you don't make anything that year, but you don't lose anything either. How are they able to do this where they have the money set up to where they're not, you're able to earn money, tax-free money, but it not be considered invested directly in the market? What they do is they put your money into 7 and 10-year bonds and 50 by 50, a lot of times 50% loan to value ratio for commercial properties. Why do they do the 50 to 50 loan to value ratio for commercial properties? Because they know that usually when the market the real estate market drops, the most that it drops is 40%. And that way they can have a fire sale, still make 10% on top of their money. The same goes for the 7 and 10-year bonds. Historically, as long as you're willing to ride out those 7 to 10-year bonds, they always make money. So they don't mind paying you out and using the indexes as a measuring stick for you. But we're going to go into a lot more detail on how that works. This is the way a lot of people have their finances set up, to where 80% of it is taxable with a full withdrawal, And then the other 20% has a LIFO, last in, first out tax treatment. That 80% taxable with full withdrawal, you're looking at traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, SEF plans, deferred comp plans, pensions, and Social Security, and for those LIFO treated accounts. And what that means is when you put money into it, this account is going to be earning interest. But when you go to access the money, instead of it letting you access the money that you first put in, which is your basis, you can only access the money that came in last, which is the taxable interest. And a lot of those are savings accounts, CDs, stocks, bonds, EFTs, mutual funds, annuities, and real estate. You're paying taxes on that income, right? This is really how you should be set up. 40% of your retirement should be tax free. And then, 40% taxable, and then 20% that LIFO tax. A lot of, once again, it's not about trying to say that you owe 0% in taxes. Is not avoiding, it's avoiding paying the unnecessary taxes. So how do we get at least, and this is at least, y'all, this is not, I'm not telling you to just make sure that this is at least 40%. How do we get at least 40% of your income tax free? Once again, it's the properly structured index universal life policy. But let's keep moving. So we already know we want to avoid taxes, right? In order for our family bank to be strong. Because remember, we talked about the structure. We talked about how you're able to set up these entities to where you have your estate plan set up and everything is owned by your trust. Now we're talking about what your LLLP, your family bank, needs to do. And this asset that you have owned by your family bank is tax free, and you want it to be protected from market losses. And we're going to utilize indexing, lock in, and reset, like my mentor Doug taught me, right? Doug Andrew. Now, Warren Buffett says he has two rules to invest in. Number one rule, don't lose money, right? That's number one. But what's rule number two? Don't forget rule number one. One of the most important things when it comes to doing this is not losing money. So I have to show y'all the truth in order for you to understand where I'm trying to take you. Now, let's say you started out with 100,000. Let's say you have 100,000 and it went up 50%. What's 50% of 100,000? That's $50,000. So if you have 100,000 and it goes up 50%, you just made 50,000 on top of that 100,000. You at 150,000. And then so it goes up 50%, goes down 50%, goes up 50%, goes down 50%. That means you just broke even, right? Wrong. See, you have to pay attention to what's called the internal rate of return. What are you actually getting minus the fees, minus the expenses, the taxes, and minus the way that they use numbers to try to make you not understand what's happening. When you go sit down with your advisor and they tell you 1 year you gained 50, another year you lost 50, 1 year you gained 50, other year you lost 50, the way you normally think about money, you would think you actually just broke even. But actually, this is what actually just happened. If you started at 100,000 and you gained 50%, that puts you at 150,000. But if it drops 50%, what's 50% of 150,000? That's 75,000. So it's not going to just drop 50,000. It's going to drop 75,000. And then if it goes up 50%, so now it's 50% of a smaller number. It goes up 50%. That puts it back to $112,500, and then down 50%. Whereas a traditional advisor will have you thinking you just broke even. What actually just happened is you just lost a lot of money, and you're down $50,000 to $56,250 after starting at 100,000 just 4 years ago. You want to eliminate the losses. And just to double down on this. So what does this mean? What this means is whatever you lose, you have to do at least double just to break even. Before you can even talk about now you're starting to earn profit, you have to do at least double just to break even. And let me explain that. So if you started with 100,000 and you lost 50%, what's 50% of 100,000? That's $50,000. So if you started 100,000 and you just lost 50%, now you're down to $50,000. What's 50% of 50,000? 50% of 50,000 is just 25,000. So that means if you just go up 50%, you're only at 75,000. What that means is whatever you lose, you have to do at least double to break even. So if you lost 50%, you have to do at least 100% to break even, because the only way that you can get from 50 to 100,000 is by doubling it that full 100%. So remember that whatever you lose, you have to do at least double to break even. So let's look at this. These are real numbers, everybody, from January 2000 to March 2020, right? So in the first year, 2000, the stock market was up 8.97%. Great, right? But then the next 3 years, first year, negative 2.04%. Next year, negative 17.26%. Next year, negative 24.29%. Over those 3 years, it was a total a loss if you had your money put directly into the market of directly into the indexes of 43.59%. So what does that mean, y'all? If they lost 43.59%, let's just make it even. Let's make this 44%. If they lost 44%, how much do they need to even break even? You need double, right? So that means they need a little less than 88% to just break even for the money that they lost. So what happens that next year? Because they lost so much money the year prior, that next year they had a huge return of 32.19%, right? Anybody have any gamblers in their family, right? And what do you know about those gamblers, right? They're only going to tell you about the times that they won. They're very rarely are going to mention the times that they lost at the casino. So what's going to happen is that person that you know that has their money invested directly in the indexes, they're going to come to you and say, hey, I just earned 32.19% this year. I did great. Because once again, they don't want to think about what they lost, and they probably don't even realize they have to do at least double to even break even. I just made 32.19%. But guess what? Over the next 4 years, it only went up 57.34%. After the 32.19, it was 4.43, then 8.36, then 12.36. Then immediately after that, negative 4.15%, negative 40.9%. Once again, they haven't even broke even from when they lost money in the beginning. Now they're just when they started to climb out of it, they had to experience another loss. So just to let you know, I'm not saying you won't make money if you just sit your money in the indexes. Because guess what? If you started with $100,000 and you followed these gains and you had your money directly in the index, that 100,000 would have grown to $191,237.41. However, after you consider fees and taxes, that's going to drop it down to $157,931.52. Right? So once again, you made money, but so that means over 20 years, 100,000 you made after the internal rate of return, you only gained $57,931.52. What if you had your money in a properly structured index universal life policy, or IUL? Because here's the thing. A lot of people are going to say, I'm not going to put my money in a IUL and I'm limited to earning up to 11% when the market I can be getting a lot higher. I just showed you what happens in the market, because here's a real term that a lot of people don't know. If you buy less than 100 shares at a time, you are considered an unsophisticated investor. An unsophisticated, I didn't, that's not my word, that's their word. You are an unsophisticated investor, and what that means is by the time news reaches to you, millions have already been made, and you're making decisions based off the data that you're able to get as a typical consumer, right? What if you were able to earn uh, at the most 11% every year? Like, so in the years that it was less than 11%, you earned what that number was, but in the years that it was more than 11%, you were capped at 11, but you had none of the losses. So basically what it's saying is whenever whenever the market did well, you gained. When it did bad, you didn't gain anything, but you didn't lose anything either. If you look historically, there are always most of the time, because there are some exceptions that happen periodically, but typically when you look at every 10 years in the market, there are typically 7 good years and 3 bad years. What that means is there are typically 7 years where the market is up and then 3 years where the market is down. If you only took the gains and you avoided all of the losses, meaning that you weren't trying to get back double your money just to break even, that same 100,000, the internal rate of return after fees, after taxes, would come to $285,640.40. $285,640.40 compared to $157,931.52. Which one is better? I don't know. I know inherently it might seem like the other one is better, but I just showed you how it works. So I'm going to need y'all to remember this formula, all right? It says take the end date value minus the beginning date value, and that'll give you a difference in value. And your difference in value divided by the beginning date value gives you the percentage change. I'm going to need y'all to screenshot this, take a picture of this, because you're going to also use this same formula to determine how much if you already have an existing policy, if your policy was structured correctly, to see exactly how much money that it's been averaging. But first, let me show you how the IULs work compared to people who are putting their money directly in the indexes. So if you had your money put directly in the S&P 500, you started at $2,779.83. And by February 2020, after February 2029, the beginning, you had $3,370.29. The difference, once you subtract the beginning from the end, gives you a difference of a positive $590.46. When you divide that $590.46 by that beginning value of $2,279.83, that gives you a percentage change of 25.9%, right? So if once again, if your money was directly in the market, this is what you earned. However, if your money was directly in the IUL, you only earned 11% that year. You can't win them all, right? Remember what we showed you. So what about if your money was still in the market starting in March 2019 to March 2020? You had that beginning S&P value of $2,808.48 and an ending value of $2,386.83. And that's a difference of a negative $421.65. When you divide that by the beginning value, that gives you a negative 15%. If your money was directly in the market, you made a negative 15%. And what did I tell you? Whatever you lose, you have to do at least double to break even. So if you lost 15%, that means next year you got to do at least 30% to just break even before you can start talking about back to making profit. However, if your money was in an IUL, you lost zero. What happens is you get that lock in and reset. You gain that positive percentage, but when the market goes down, you don't lose any of your principal like it does when it's put directly into the indexes, right? It's protected because it's not put directly in there. It's just using the indexes as a measuring stick. But let's keep it going. So let's take it from February 2020 to February 2021. If you had your money invested directly in the market started at $3,370.29. It ended in February 2021 at $3,934.83. That's a change of a positive $564.54. You divide that by that beginning value, and you come with a positive of 16.75%. Remember what I told y'all. They needed to do at least double to break even. This didn't even break them even. If you had your money put in a properly structured IUL, you would have gotten 11% that year. But remember, this is another 11% straight profit because you didn't lose any of your principal. You're not trying to make up for what you lost because you don't lose that principal, right? But now here's the thing. I know y'all want to hit that home run. I know. All right, you say, listen, math doesn't lie. I get it. As long as I'm not losing nothing every month, that 11% cap makes it to where I ultimately win. I get it. But listen, Randolph, I like the feeling of hitting a home run. Now, you can still have that feeling of hitting a home run because here's the thing. We we recommend, and a lot of times people do, is putting the money in the capped indexes because you avoid the participation rates. If you were to put your money, all of your money in an uncapped index, yes, you're opening yourself up to where when it exceeds, when you get a high return, you get to participate in that huge return. However, there's a 5% participation rate. So let's say if it's a typical year where you're earning an average of 8 to the return is approximately 9%, and then you have to pay a 5% participation rate. That just knocked down that 10 to 9 to 5 to 4 just because you wanted to put all your money in that uncapped account. So we don't necessarily recommend that you just keep it in there. But however, let's say the market crashes like it always does, and then shift a lot of your principal into an uncapped account index, because you do have that option. You just have to be prepared to pay that 5% participation rate. So let's say if your money was directly in the market, you started at March 2020 at $2,386.83. By March 2021, the market was at $3,934.83. That's a change in the index of $1,548. And you divide that by the start value of $2,386.83, you get a positive 64.8%. That means if your money was directly in the market, you gained 64.8%. But guess what? Remember I talking about those unsophisticated investors? Those sophisticated investors, based off the information that they had, a lot of them took all of their money out right before the market crashed. So they cashed out and they realized all of that gain. And then right after it crashed, they used that money to buy those stocks back at a discount. So they are the ones that really benefited from this 64.8%. A lot of you, per the last illustration that I showed, haven't even broken even yet. But let's say you switch your money to an uncapped account for your properly structured max funded index universal life policy. After you subtract the 5% participation rate, you would have came out with 59.8% gain. That's almost 60%. So just imagine if you had $1 million in a properly structured index universal life policy, and you just that very next year it went up 60%. You just made $600,000 tax free. So you want your money to be tax free, you want it to be protected from market losses, and you want the ability to access your money. All right. So how do you access your money from these accounts? All right. So here's how you access money. So whenever you put money into a properly structured index universal life policy, you have the accumulated amount and then you have the available cash value, the accumulated amount and the available cash value. So that means if you put in, after all things being even, and we're not considering um, a potential cost of insurance and things of that nature, if you put in $1 million, you your accumulation is 1 million and your cash available cash value is 1 million. And let's say your the return that year is a 10% index growth. So now you have 1.1 million accumulated amount and available cash value. $1,100,000, right? And let's say you take out a loan against that $1,100,000. Now, I say loan. A lot of us have a negative relationship with the word loan. The reason being that we have a negative relationship with a loan is because we've only experienced loans as consumers. The reason why you want this to be considered a loan is because when you look on your tax return, you have three places for spots that you owe money. You have passive income, active income, and portfolio income. Nowhere on there does it says borrowed income. The way that you're able to get your money out of this policy is you're able to borrow it, right? And once again, you want it to be considered borrowed because now it's not considered income, right? Now, the beautiful thing about borrowing from a properly structured index universal life policy is not like a whole life policy. We're gonna compare a whole life policy to an IUL very soon, but the benefit of you borrowing from a properly structured index universal life policy and not a whole life policy is, guess what? You're going to, both scenarios, you're going to get charged interest. Both scenarios, you don't have to pay this back until after you're dead, right? However, when you borrow from a properly structured max funded index universal life policy, whatever interest rate they charge you, they're going to automatically credit you the same amount. If you do what's called the index loan or a participating loan, also referred to as an alternative loan, right? Different carriers call them different things. But what they're going to do is, let's say they charge you 4.5%, like this scenario that we're doing here. They're going to credit you 4.5%. And then they're going to let you use that 4.5% to purchase what's called upside options. Now, what some people do is they take that 4.5% credit and they keep it in the general account portfolio, and that's considered a wash loan. In my opinion, why make it a wash loan if you don't have to pay it back until after you're dead anyway? And just so you know, when I say don't have to pay it back to after you're dead, I mean that, let's say you have $1 million death benefit, but you borrowed out $900,000 plus interest. Whatever you didn't pay back while you were alive, they're going to subtract from that death benefit, and then they're going to give whoever your beneficiary is the rest. So that's what I mean by you don't have to pay it back to after you're dead. But so, in my opinion, you don't want to use this interest that they credit you as a wash loan. You want to use this interest to buy upside options. And what upside options means is say, hey, you go to this broker and you say, hey, I see that these shares are $50 a share. I want to purchase the option to buy these shares at $50 a share a year from now, no matter how much it is. So that means that if a year from now you just purchase the options to buy these shares at $50 a share, but now it's up $150 a share, then what that means is the insurance carrier is going to make that immediate transaction. Because listen, the insurance carriers, they're not in the business of putting your money directly in the stock market. So what it's going to be is going to be a quick transaction. Let's say if it's one of the 7 out of 10 years that the market does good and that share is up, they're going to purchase it for that low amount, and then they're going to instantly sell it for the higher amount that is worth that day. They're going to take out that 4.5% that they credited you, and then they're going to give you the rest of the return as a tax-free return in addition to the money that you're already earning from the indexes. All right. So that policy loan now makes it to where your available cash value is $1 million again. But your accumulated value is still 1.1 1,100,000. Why is why do you still have an accumulated value of 1.1 million and now you have an available value of 1 million and they were both the same? It's because you borrowed against your policy. What it's saying is when you took that money out of your policy, you didn't actually take your money. You used your money as a collateral to borrow other people's money, right? So now you have what I like to call twin babies, right? Twin babies. And who doesn't like twin babies? You have your cash money in your hand to spend out in the real world, and you have the digital cash that's technically still in there earning interest. Because guess what? When the next year comes around and there's another 10% growth, it's not going to be getting 10% off the available cash value. It's going to be getting 10% off of the 1.1 million, right? So, for example, let's say if you had $100,000 and you borrowed out 90,000, so that means your accumulated value is still your accumulated amount is still 100,000, but your available amount is now only 10,000 because you borrowed out 90,000. But that next year, that 10% that your policy is going to earn is going to be earned off that higher number, the accumulated amount, because that money is still in there earning interest technically. So in that scenario, instead of just earning $1,000 because that's 10% of 10,000, you're going to earn 10,000 because that's 10% of 100,000. The same in this scenario. When the market goes up 10%, that's going to be 10% of $1.1 million, and that's going to come to a total of $1,210,000 accumulated value, right? You're getting charged at 4%, 4.5% policy loan interest, and that's going to mean your policy loan balance is going to be a total of $104,500. Your available cash value now is going to be $105,500. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to borrow 100,000 again. And you're going to keep doing that until the year you die, to the day you die. You're going to be able to borrow this out as long as it's there, as long as you have the available cash value and you set it up the right way. This money will continue to pay you in tax-free money that's not considered income per IRS purposes until the day you die. But it has to be structured correctly. Because here's the thing. If you're only looking at today and you're only worried about what's happening within the next 5 years, then IUL probably isn't the best thing for you. Because if you actually pay attention to it, when you look at the different options that you have for money vehicles, in the first 5 years, a life policy is probably the most expensive vehicle that you can get. But all I got to do is have you think about it like this. What if there was a 5-story building, right? What if there was a 5-story building, right? And you bought this building. You would prefer to rent this building out 100% starting from day one, right? You want the first floor rented out, the second floor, the third floor, the fourth floor, the fifth floor rented out from day one. That would give you your most money, right? This is what you would prefer to have, every floor rented out from day one. But what if I said you got to follow some rules? If you follow some rules, I can have it to where all the money that you're making from that house is 100% tax free. But you got to follow some rules. You got to follow 72E, 7702, and 101A. 72E says as long as something is considered a life insurance policy, it grows tax deferred. 7702 says as long as something is considered tax life insurance and you access the money correctly, you can access the money tax free. And 101A says as long as something is considered a life insurance policy, whenever you die, whatever's left in there is going to blossom to a larger number and pass to your beneficiaries tax free. But you just got to follow these rules. You got to follow TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA. TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA. TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA. And I know what you're thinking. And no, This is not the names of the supporting cast from the beloved 90s sitcom Moesha. No, this wasn't her best friend, her best friend's names. No. What it is back in 1980, E.F. Hutton, which is a brokerage company, brought this to the masses, right? And what happened was people started doing a run on the banks. What they were doing is they were taking all of their money, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars out of the traditional financial institutions, and they were using it to pay single premium life insurance policies. And remember, because it's a life insurance policy, it grows tax free. They can access it tax free, and whenever they die, it blossoms to a larger number and passes to their heirs tax free. And the IRS said, you can't do that. You can't just be making single payments to where your death benefit is exactly the same as your accumulated cash value. You can't be doing that. And they say, well, yes, you can. So guess what? The IRS sued E.F. Hutton, and the IRS lost. And you know what happens whenever the government loses, right? They change the rules. So what they came up with in the 1980s, over a number of years, is TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA, which is certain rules that you have to follow to make sure that you have the TEFRA, DEFRA corridor and you're following the premium payment rules when it comes to supplying these things. So how do you follow those rules when it comes to a life insurance policy, and how does it make a life insurance policy the most expensive vehicle in the first 5 years? Well, just like this building, you cannot pay off a properly structured index universal life policy in the first 5 years. It has to be paid over 5 years. It used to be 7 years, but and it's still 7 years for whole life policies. But for properly structured index universal life policies, you can have these things paid off in approximately 5 years. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. But what this is saying is, what if it's one of those situations where it's that 5 year mark? It's saying, hey, even though I know you want to have this building filled up every floor starting from day one, but how about this? If you follow these rules, first year, I only want you to rent out the first floor. The second year, then you can rent out the second floor. The third year, then you can rent out the third floor. And the fourth year, the fourth floor. And the fifth year, the fifth floor. If you just every year only add one floor of rented out rooms, then when you hit 5, we're going to set it up to where all the money that you're earning from this building is 100% tax free without nobody moving out for the rest of your life. If all you had to do was not rent out the second floor the first year, the third floor, and just only rent out the floors each year by year, and after year 5, that it'll be 100% tax free and nobody would be moving out, would you not take that deal? I think you would. And once again, what that means is the cost of insurance is the most expensive in the first 5 years of a properly structured life policy. So that first year, it might look like you're losing money. Also, because you can't max fund it, you can't put in as much money as you want, as fast as you want. It's not going to be growing that fast. However, as long as you follow TAMRA, TEFRA, and DEFRA, and you fill this policy up over the next 5 years, then it becomes a cash cow, as my mentor Doug Andrew likes to say. A cash cow it becomes. All right. So I know what a lot of you thinking. I already have my life policy set up. Or matter of fact, before I get into this part, some of you may be thinking, all right, that's great, Randolph, but I'm too old to get a life insurance policy started, or my health is too bad to get a life insurance policy started. Well, let me go ahead and make you feel a little better. Because of the way these policies are structured, it's not as risk heavy to the insurance carrier, and therefore sometimes they may be able to accept risks that they might not normally take. Because the normal way that people get a life policy is they set it up to where they pay as little as possible for the most life insurance as possible. The way we're going to set you up is you're going to be paying the most possible for the least amount of life insurance as possible, right? Why are we doing that? It's because we want to take advantage of this classification of being a life insurance policy, but we don't want all of that extra tax-free interest that we're earning to be going toward paying for that big old death benefit. We want to set it up to where eventually our cash value ends up surpassing what our original death benefit was. That's why the insurance carriers, they look at you as if you're a partner and not a risk. They say, all right, this person has this policy structured to where their cash value is going to surpass their initial death benefit. And so that when they die, at the very most, we're just going to have to come up with an extra 5% to go on top of what's left in their cash value to pay out that death benefit to that beneficiary. Because remember, the way 101A says set up is whatever you have left is going to grow to a larger number, and then that's what's going to pass to your beneficiaries tax free. But let's say you're just too old or your health is too bad. We can do what's called a surrogate. Now, a lot of people have heard of the term surrogate as it relates to somebody carrying a baby for them. But the same can be used, we can use a surrogate when it comes to setting up a properly structured index universal life policy for you. Because remember, the reason why you're setting up these policies aren't for the death benefit, it's for the living benefits. You want your money to be growing tax free. You want to be able to access it tax free without penalties. You want it to sit there and be safe. And when you wake up in the morning, you don't want to be losing 20 to 40% overnight, right? And you want it to get great, good, consistent rates of return. You can get all of those benefits, but you can make the insured your grandchild or your child or one of your siblings or one of your parents. As long as they are insurable, you can make them the insured, but because you're the policy owner, you control everything and you get all of those benefits of that money. And let's say you predecease them. Let's say you put a policy on them and you got it set it up to where that IUL, you getting a tax-free annuity until the day you die. And let's say you predecease, you die before the person that you put the policy on. What you can do is you can have them set as the contingent policy owner. You can have them set to where when you die, the ownership of the policy then moves to them. And now they can continue getting this money that you had been getting for themselves tax free because it was already set up. All right. So that's how you get it. Now, some of you probably already have a whole life policy set up, or some of you already have an IUL set up, but you noticing it's not getting the same returns that I told you it should be getting. So that probably means that the wrong person set it up, right? But first, let me, and just so y'all know, I'm not just gonna beat on y'all. I'm gonna let you know that even if you think it's too late, there's a way that we can get you back on the right track, right? There's a way that we can get you back on the right track, even if you already have a whole life that you've had for years, even if you already have another policy that you had for years. There's a way that we can get you back on the right track. But first, I want to go ahead and compare the whole life to IUL. Now, here's the thing. One thing that they have for whole life is what they call a no lapse guarantee. Like when you look at a lot of the IUL illustrations, it's going to say non-guarantee. One of those reasons that it's so flexible. They don't know if you're going to be paying the minimum amount. They don't know if you're going to be paying the target premium. They have no idea if you're going to be paying that 7-pay, the max funding it. They have no idea. So one of the reasons that they can't guarantee it is it's so flexible. The reason why they're able to guarantee a properly structured, not a whole life, is because it's so strict. Whatever you set up, that's what you have to stick to. And if you don't pay it for a prolonged period of time, that policy is now done, right? And they also have what's called a 2% floor. So remember, with the IUL, if the market goes up, you gain, but if it goes down, you don't earn nothing that year, but you don't lose anything either. What they're saying is, even when the market is down, we're going to give you 2%. Now, that's not bad, but is it worth it? Like, um, it's going to take longer to fund, and it's designed primarily for death benefit. And what that means is they have it set to where you can switch between level and increasing death benefit when you're setting up a life policy. A whole life policy is permanently set at increasing, meaning that it's the death benefit plus the cash value is being added together for that death benefit. Whereas if you have a properly structured index universal life policy, you can have it set to where it's increasing, or you can have it set and switch to level, or you can have it set to where it's level from the very beginning, depending on how fast you plan on funding this policy. And the fact that it's set to level means that it gives the opportunity for your cash value to ultimately surpass your initial death benefit. And that way, eventually, your cost of insurance, if it's proper, if it's constructed correctly, is only going to be approximately 1%. So what that means is, if the index, if you just earned 11% in your properly structured max funded IUL, they're going to take 1% for a cost of insurance, and then they're going to give you the 10% as your tax-free interest return. Whereas if you have it in a whole life policy, what's probably going to happen is it's still going to get that 11% return, but your cost of insurance is going to be 5, 6, 7%. Right now, here's how you can tell how your whole life policy is doing. Because, and I'm going to let y'all know right now in advance, when you do this, you're going to see that your internal rate of return, meaning after fees, after everything, after cost of insurance, administration fees, cost of insurance, your internal rate of return, if you have a whole life policy, it's probably going to be less than 5% aggregate. I'm not talking about 5% a year. I'm talking about less than 5% return aggregate. And the only way that you can get that 5% average is if you started when you were in your 30s and ended when you were in your 90s, right? So how do you know what your IUL, I'm sorry, your whole life policy has been getting? Now, y'all remember that formula that I showed you in the beginning, to where we took the beginning value, we subtracted it from the end value, then we got the difference, and then with the difference, we divided it by the beginning value, and that gave us our percentage gain. What I want you to do is I want you to take whatever your available cash value is for your life insurance policy. And it could be a whole life or IUL, whatever type of life insurance policy that has a cash value. Take whatever your available cash value is, and then I want you to subtract all of the premiums that you paid into it. So what that means is, if your available cash value is 100, and you paid $75 in premiums, I want you to subtract 75 from 100, right? So take your available cash value and subtract all of the premiums that you paid into it from when you first got the policy started. Whatever that difference is, I want you to divide it by the premiums that you paid into it. And that will give you what your internal rate of return is. And I think a lot of you will be shocked to discover that your policy is getting an internal rate of return of less than 5%. So not only is it strict, meaning that you can't, it's not flexible, you can't change what the payments are. It takes longer to fund. You can get a properly structured max funded index universal life policy funded in approximately 5 years. It takes at least 7 years for a whole life policy. It's designed primarily for death benefit. Once again, that you cannot switch the level back to, you can't switch from increasing. It stays increasing death benefit. So that means your cash value keeps getting eaten up by your death benefit. Whenever you borrow, the interest isn't credited. Remember how I said when you borrow from a properly structured index universal life policy, the interest, whatever they charge you in interest, they credit you that in order to buy upside options. They don't do that for whole life policies, and it's typically a fraction net rate of internal net rate of return than a properly structured IUL. A properly structured IUL is going to be earning you an average of 8 to 11% annually, not an aggregate of a 5% internal rate of return. And once again, what do you give up for that 2% floor? That 2% floor is only going to mean anything in the 3 years out of 10 that the market does bad. So if only on average, only 3 years out of 10, the market does bad, that's the only time that 2% floor is going to mean anything. The rest of the years, the 7 out of 10 approximately, you would have been above that 2% floor. So getting that 2% floor and that no lapse guarantee is very, very expensive. All right. And let me tell y'all this before I tell y'all what the solution is to get, if you already have a life policy, but you know you need to get it put in the right situation. I want to tell you it's not your fault. All of you have insurance agents, financial advisors, coaches, all of that good stuff, and they didn't tell you. And I'm gonna tell you the reason why they didn't tell you was one or two reasons. Either they didn't know or they didn't care to tell you. And which one do you prefer? You prefer that they told you because they had no idea. Hey, I know I'm your professional. I know you're expert, but I had no idea this was a thing. Or do you want it to where they knew, but they didn't think, I don't got to tell that person, right? They don't got a lot of money anyway, right? Which one do you want? I don't want either or, right? Because here's the thing. What you can do is called a 1035 exchange. And why do you want to get a 1035 exchange, right? Because an IUL, a life policy, whole life, IUL, it's just a tool. They're only tools. One thing Doug Andrew told me, he said, listen, would you rather take a Phil Mickelson's and Tiger Woods golf clubs, or would you rather take their swing? And when he told me that, I thought, well, shoot, would I rather take, LeBron James's tennis shoes, or would I rather take his ability to penetrate the hole, his jump shot, his ability to jump, his vertical? You would take the skills over the tools, because without the skills, the tools mean nothing. You can do what's called a 1035 exchange. So a lot of y'all probably heard of what's called a 1031 exchange, right? And a 1031 exchange is usually when people make real estate transactions. They're able to take the profit from one property and move it over to another 1035 exchange, so they don't have to realize any of the profits, right? You can do a 1035 exchange with your life policies. How do you do a 1035 exchange with your life policies? This is how it works. What you have to do is I look at your life policy, and then I build the one that I believe is structured better and better for you. Once I build a policy that's structured better, comparable to your existing policy, I have to show my insurance carrier, and then I have to show your old insurance carrier. And both insurance carriers both have to agree that what I made for you is better. That's a 1035 exchange. So if you currently have a whole life policy that's not performing, or a IUL or VUL or any type of policy that's not performing, you can reach out to me and we can do what's called a 1035 exchange. And I have to show your carrier and my carrier, and they both have to agree that what I just did for you is better. All right, y'all. So we talked about the structures, the business structures, the LLCs. The LLCs treated as S corps, the LLLPs, the limited liability, limited partnerships. We talked about what you need to have inside of the LLLP. You have to have assets that are earning money, because you can't just have an entity set up solely for the purposes of protecting your personal assets. You actually have to have a legitimate business, and your personal assets come along for the ride with that protection, right? So we talked about that. Now let's talk about trust, right? Because we talked about places where you can cite us to trust, but let's get into more details on why it's important to understand the difference between wills and trusts. So let me tell y'all, only 40% of Americans have a will. What percentage of Americans do you believe have a trust? Only 17%. So it's and when I see those numbers, it lets me know that people don't understand. Like, all right, they got a will because they probably want their family to avoid attorney's fees, court costs, time, delays, but they don't realize if all you have a will is a will, you just guaranteed probate. And usually, whenever somebody get their trust set up, they're also getting their financial power of attorney set up, their healthcare alternative set up. So I'm going to go through a few scenarios of what you need to understand and why you need to have a trust set up and your estate planning done. All right. So let's say it was a couple in a car accident, right? Let's say it was a couple in a car accident and their adult children show up to the hospital. Did you know that if you are in an accident, you and your spouse and both of y'all are incapacitated, your adult children show up, they have no right to get any information about you, and they can't make any decisions on your behalf. You're forced to have somebody that you don't even know, that doesn't even know you, that's making decisions on your behalf. And your children are forced to sit in the room having no idea what's going on, right? Could that be a concern for any of you? If that would be a concern, you need to go ahead and get your HIPAA compliant healthcare power of attorney taken care of. That way, and you can name your children as either your primary or contingent or tertiary, which is a fancy way of saying second contingent. Or in that way, if something happens to you and you're incapacitated in the hospital, your adult children can pull up to the hospital. They can get all the information that they need, and they can make decisions for you based off of what they know that you want. All right. What about this scenario? What if you have let's say you have a bank account or a qualified retirement account, right? And you were told, listen, you can avoid probate. You're just going to have to name your beneficiary as the direct beneficiary of this account. Name them as the direct beneficiary of this qualified retirement account, this bank account, right? And that's true. You just successfully put in a strategy that would help you avoid probate. However, what if you were in an accident, you died, your wife died, and your son, who was your direct beneficiary, died in that same accident. And your son was the one that was named as your direct beneficiary. What happens is it's going to go to whoever your closest surviving relative. What about that child that never calls, never visits? Now they're going to be the ones that's going to get that money. And what you also just did is you just unintentionally disinherited your favorite grandchildren. Because here's the thing, y'all might not say it out loud, y'all might not, might not even whisper it, but you got a favorite kid and you got some favorite grandkids. You're not going to treat them all the same. That's not your favorite child, that's not your favorite grandkid. You got another one that's your favorite. So what if you just involuntarily not only did the money go to the child that doesn't even visit, doesn't even help out, but you just unintentionally disinherited your grandchildren. What you may want to do is, instead of having the person listed as the direct beneficiary. You want to have a trust listed as the beneficiary, and the details laid out in the trust as to what would happen, that you want this money to go to this person, and what would happen if this person isn't available, right? So yes, just naming a person as the direct beneficiary avoids probate, but in a lot of instances, it's better to name the trust, because if something does happen, and this does happen, y'all, this not no something that it happens a lot, to where people die in an accident together. You just want to have it set up to where you have everything put in the right situation. But what about joint tenancy, right? So who's heard this? Stop me if you heard this. Joint tenancy says, all right, you can avoid probate. What we're going to do is we're going to put your children's name on your deeds, and we're going to put your children's names on your bank accounts. What just happened? Yes, you were successful. You just successfully avoided probate. However, what just happened is you just unintentionally invited a lot of things that you didn't realize. What if that child gets a divorce? What if that child is involved in a lawsuit? What if that child is going through bankruptcy, and this attorney that's on the other side does a skip trace, and they find out that their name is listed on your bank accounts, their name is listed on your deeds? That means that they're part only of their property. That means that there's a part of their assets that needs to be up for grabs in this lawsuit, in this bankruptcy, in this divorce. And what if this husband that you probably never liked in the first place now is taking this time as an opportunity to divorce your daughter, and now they want, in order for you to satisfy the divorce, because your daughter is listed as one of the owners of your home, and let's say it's a $500,000 home now, and her share is $250,000. The only way that you can get her share to give him to satisfy the divorce is for you to put a second mortgage on your home, or another mortgage on your home after you've already paid it out. Same. So if you're putting it on your mortgage, on your deed, if you're putting it on your bank accounts, if you're putting it on the house, it's up for grabs in divorce. It's up for grabs in lawsuits. It's up for grabs in bankruptcy. Or what if, instead of putting that person's name in order for it to transfer seamlessly, you made it to where the trust is the direct beneficiary? And that way, if your child is going through a divorce, bankruptcy, a lawsuit, if the money goes to the trust first, they can stop the money. One of the disadvantages of naming somebody, not only is it up for grabs in a lawsuit just while you are alive, but even when you die, they won't be able to stop the money. What if they already know that they're going? What if you didn't put them as a joint tenant, but now you just have them listed as the beneficiary, right? And when you die, the money is going to come straight to them. They can't stop it. And once again, that gets added to the lawsuit, that gets added to the bankruptcy, that gets added to the divorce. What you should do, what a lot of people do, is they name the trust as the direct beneficiary. And that way, whenever the person passes away, if your child is going through a divorce, bankruptcy, or lawsuit, then they don't have to take the money. Not only do you avoid them potentially having the stuff taken while you're alive, being involved in that lawsuit and all of that, you can also protect yourself them after you pass away, to where their creditors aren't going to come out of nowhere and take all of the money. Or what if you have a large IRA, right? What if it's not a deed? What if it's not a bank account? What if it's a qualified retirement account, right? What's going to happen is the person that is your beneficiary is going to get a lump sum of $200,000 in this scenario. So if it's $200,000 with a tax rate of 32%, the IRS is going to take $64,000 from that $200,000, right? That's going to leave only $136,000 for your child, right? And what if, just as they get that lump sum of money, that husband or that wife that's been waiting, see this as the perfect time to get that divorce. Now they're going to have to split that 136,000. They're going to get 68,000. Started at 200,000, ended up your beneficiary only got 68,000. Where you can set it in an IRA beneficiary trust. You can put a clause inside of your trust to where you can have it set up to where whenever you pass away, your child doesn't have to take the money. They can just leave the money in there. They can take little bits and pieces at a time, and it won't, and they will have never technically taken possession of the money. And that way it won't be thrown into all those scenarios that it can just be get taken like that. Even with divorce, if divorce is looming, they can keep all that money in the trust, go through their divorce proceedings, and after the divorce is finalized, then they can start accessing the money. All right. So with your IRA beneficiary trust, and they call it an IRA beneficiary trust, but these are for all of the qualified retirement accounts. You get to manage the distribution after you're gone. Because here's the thing. A lot of you, if you don't know this, typically when people get a lump sum of money in an estate, it's usually gone after the first 18 months. Within the first 18 months, it's gone. Not reinvested, gone. So let's say you're somebody that want to make sure that the money isn't completely put to waste. You might set up rules to where it's distributed a certain way. It also protects your children against lawsuits. It protects them against divorce. So let's talk about conservatorship, y'all. Now, and once again, this is all of the benefits of a trust and a properly set up estate plan. A lot of you don't realize this is just because you're married to someone doesn't mean that you're able to make decisions for them, financial or health wise. What that means is if this person, let's say you have a spouse, and once again, they were in an accident and they are incapacitated in the hospital, right? And let's say that all of your health benefits have ran out, expired, and you've hit all the limits. And in order for your spouse to remain, you have to transfer them to a private facility in which you have to pay some money out of pocket, right? So let's say you go ahead and call your spouse's financial advisor and you say, hey, my husband was just involved in an accident and he's incapacitated and we're going to have to move him to another facility. I'm going to have to pull some money out of his 401k. And that's when your financial advisor, of course, he's going to he's going to apologize, say, I'm sorry to hear that. So all you have to do is send me your husband's death certificate, and then I'll be able to get right on that for you. He said, and then that's when you say, hold up, excuse me, you didn't hear me. My husband isn't dead. He's just incapacitated. So I need to access this money in order to move him to this next facility. Then that's when that financial advisor is going to have to let you know, say, hey, actually, you don't get any rights until after this person's dead. Yes, I know that you're married, but you don't only get right. You don't get, yes, you and you're listed as the beneficiary. However, those rights don't come into play until after your husband passes away. Since he is alive, you're actually going to have to get a court order in order to access these funds, right? In order to get this stuff taken care of, right? Whereas you could have, if you executed a trust and a properly set up estate plan, already have your durable and or springing financial power of attorney set up, already have your HIPAA compliant healthcare power of attorney set up, and that way you don't have to go through the rigmarole of getting court orders and going through all this stuff just to do something that you could have already had set up in the beginning, right? Do any of you have any special needs beneficiaries? Now, one of the things that people do is they leave a big lump sum of money to a special needs kid, right? A beneficiary, their child. What they just unintentionally did was they just kicked this child out of all of their programs, all of the programs that they were eligible for based off their financial and economic standing. When you just left in that lump sum of money, you just pushed them out of that category. However, if you can set up a universal guardian trust or a special needs trust, you can have it set up to where the money goes there for them, and that way they never actually take control of the money, but it's utilized for their well-being. So now this special needs person still has all of the access to the programs that they need in order to keep moving, but they also have access to this extra money that you have for them, right? And the conservativeship definitely covered this, because here's the thing: if you're somebody who wants to be able to make decisions for your adult child, let's say you're a father, and you're a girl dad, and you want that if you get a call in the middle of the night that one of your children were involved in an accident or something happened, you want to be able to show up to that hospital, get all the information that you can get, and make all the decisions for your child, for your spouse. You need to not only have this set up for your spouse, but have this set up for your adult children too. All right, to where you're able to make moves. And let's say you're a grandparent and you also watch your grandchildren on a prolonged period of time. Maybe you need to have these set up to where if your child is on a vacation or at work and you have to rush this grandchild to the hospital, maybe they cut their leg, cut their arm, broke their leg, fell out of a tree, whatever. You need to have this document in place to where you can show it to the facilities and be able to call shots on your grandchild or your child's behalf. All right. So to close off this section, let's go over some statistics. So nearly half of all respondents believe that estate planning is only for the ultra rich. Most people don't need it. I'm gonna tell you this: it's not for the ultra rich. If you own a home, if you have assets that you want to protect, you definitely need to make sure that you have an estate plan, even if it's not millions of dollars, right? 25% haven't spoken about it with their families because they don't like to think about their own deaths. Listen, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. You think if you start talking about wills, trusts, estate planning, that means you're going to die? Listen, I got some bad news for you. You are going to die, but if you don't start having these conversations, you're going to leave your everything up in a mess, right? To be figured out. 49% say their assets aren't worth enough to consider estate planning. Listen, I don't even know what y'all driving, but I bet most of y'all cars are probably, whether it's, you might say it's inflated or not, but according to the government, it's probably worth 40, 50,000 plus 60,000, $70,000. So if your car is worth that much, you've already met the requirements to take this seriously. 61% say a will is enough to meet their estate related needs. Once again, if all you have is a will, you just guaranteed probate. If your estate planning needs is to make sure that your family doesn't have to go through probate, to make sure that they're able to access the money that they need or the make medical decisions, whether you're incapacitated or not, if all you have is a will, you do not have enough. And 35% have experienced or know someone who has experienced family conflict as a result of not having an estate plan or comprehensive will. When you don't set this stuff up, it makes it to where families break up. It makes it to where families don't talk to each other for years, decades, if they ever talk again at all. Uh, you don't just do it for you, you do it for the people around you. And 46% of Americans say that they are interested in learning more about estate planning. And if you're watching this, then you fall in the 46%, and it's very important, right? So what are the most common questions? What's better, a will or a trust? Once again, an attorney will tell you it depends, but if you are looking to avoid probate, then what's better is a trust. What's probate court? How does it work? Can it be avoided? Absolutely. Now, there's a place for probate. If somebody dies owing somebody money that they didn't pay, that's when they have to go through probate court. But families shouldn't have to go through probate, where it's taken on average 2 years in order to settle a probate case. And guess what's happening? Why it's taking all this time for the probate to go through? Usually, whoever the most responsible child is the one that's paying all of the bills on the house, the utilities, the taxes. Because listen, you're gonna still have to pay taxes while probate going on. You're gonna still have to pay utilities while probate going on. And what's happening now? Let's say it's 3 children, but only one of the children are responsible. How do you think that one child is going to feel knowing that they're paying all of the bills, but they have to go to these other two just to make decisions, right? And what if they ready to make a decision and make a move, but they can't make a move because the other ones aren't willing to sign off because you didn't, put all this in order. All right. So there's some people that say, listen, probate isn't that expensive, right? They got fees and fee caps in place to make it to where attorneys and courts aren't able to take advantage of you, right? But let me tell y'all a story. I grew up in a cul-de-sac. I think my mama, she must have liked cul-de-sacs because throughout my childhood, we moved to at least 3 different places that had where we were living on a cul-de-sac. And if you don't know what a cul-de-sac is, it's a street that goes to like a dead end, but it's like a big loop. And around that loop, you got houses, you got houses on the left and the right side of the road, but around that loop, you got houses going around the loop. And then it U-turns you back the other way that you came. And one thing that I would notice in these cul-de-sac streets is every neighborhood always had that one cat that would just lay in the middle of the cul-de-sac, right? And that was that cat's neighborhood. And out of 100 cars, 99% of people are going to see that cat in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and they're going to go around, and they're going to make sure not to run over that cat. But it's that one psychopath. It's that one psychopath that's going to see that cat laying down in the street, and they're going to run over it. That just made their day. What happens is if you go through probate, you're going to have to put your estate up in the newspaper for at least 3 weeks. What does that mean? What that means and what happens is you're going to get a psychopath that even if they have no claim to your estate, they have no way of winning their claim, they're still going to file a claim because to them, your estate is just a kitten in the middle of a cul-de-sac, and they're going to run it over. And even if they don't win, because the estate was what they call the word is it's challenged. I can't think of the word, but when you challenge the estate, when you go against it, because the estate was challenged, all of those fees that was put into place in order to prevent it from costing too much, all of those caps are now removed because all it took was one person challenging and going against the estate, right? And the only reason that they knew about it is because they had to be put in the newspaper. And the only reason they had to be put in the newspaper is because you didn't have a trust and you weren't able to have all these things take care of privately. And like I said, even if it takes a minimum of 6 months, but 2 years on average, you still have the house payment, whoever your beneficiary has to pay, the monthly bills they have to pay, the real estate taxes that they have to pay. And like I said, they have to put it up in the newspaper at least 3 times. And if it's contested, that's the word I was looking for, contested, it exposes your estate. And those people are going to run over your estate like running over your cat. And like I was saying, the only person that's paying this is your most responsible child. And what's going to happen is they're going to be left with the decision of paying to keep everything going, meanwhile dealing with these other beneficiaries, because they are also your closest surviving relatives that don't want to put nothing in, but they don't want to make no decisions, and they want to take advantage, right? A will equals probate, and this is what it looks like. Your family property goes into there, your cash, your security, your stocks. You get charged 10% liquidation costs for attorney's fees, executive fees, and accounting. 30% in taxes for federal and state taxes. And if you have a state that has state taxes and income taxes, and your family ends up with only 60% of your total liquidated estates. Wouldn't you rather your family get 100%? Now, you can't always get it to 100%. Sometimes it might be 90%, but it's nowhere near the same when you're dealing with probate. So, y'all, I'm about to close out with this. And for anybody that's stayed with me throughout this entire workshop, I appreciate you. Let me know who you are. I will send you a cookie, right? But let me tell y'all something. I remember growing up in this low income neighborhood. I remember growing up, and I remember as a kid when the Chrysler 300 first came out. Let me tell you, this is a beautiful vehicle. Like when it came out, whenever that Chrysler 300 would pass by me and my friends, we would stop what we were doing. We would look at the Chrysler 300. We would watch it as it passed, and we would say, "Look at that car. It looks just like a Bentley. It looks just like a Bentley." Like it made our day to see that Chrysler 300. Until one day when I grew up and I was walking in this parking lot, and not only did I see a Chrysler 300 and a Bentley parked right next to each other, they were both the same color and they were both back then. And it was at that very moment that I said a Chrysler 300 looks nothing like a Bentley. Like I said, y'all, IUL is just a tool. These business entities are just tools. The tools mean nothing without the skill set and the experience of what it takes to make this tool work the way it's supposed to. I meet a lot of people that say, you do you know that I've had multiple people try to explain this stuff to me, try to explain this how IULs work, try to explain to me how these LLCs treated as S corp work, and you're the first person that made it make sense of why I should put a lot of my money in a properly structured index universal life policy. You know, you're the first person, and guess what they turn around and do? They go around and they get a policy started by their cousin or their aunt or their uncle or their parent. Now listen, there's nothing wrong with supporting your family and friends that have life insurance licenses. Listen, we all got to start somewhere, and it's good for them to have supporters like you. But here's the thing: they're Chrysler 300s. They know enough to get the license, but they probably don't know enough in order to make it to where it moves the way it's supposed to move. Yes, a Chrysler 300 is a great vehicle. I mean, it has great interior, very advanced, sleek lines and designs. But wouldn't you rather be in a Bentley? I think you would. And based off the time that I've been learning and what I've been doing, I consider myself a Bentley when it comes to putting these things together. So, like I said, my name is Randolph Love III. I appreciate all of you for spending this time with me. If you want a copy of this Shield Wolf Strongholds Wealth Fortress, please send a text to Legacy 24 to 904-822-4262. Legacy 24 to 904-822-4262. That's LEGACY 24. No spaces, no dashes, to 904-822-4262. Country code +1. Hope you enjoy the rest of your night. This has been Randolph Love III with Shield Wolf Strongholds. Until next time, visit shieldwolfstrong.com.